if you've ever had that nagging feeling that autism in girls just looks different from what you've read about, you are not just imagining things. Today, we're going to break down those unseen signs and, more importantly, show you how to advocate for the right kind of support. So let's get right into it.
So, does this question hit close to home? You see the struggles, you see the unique way your daughter experiences the world, but it just doesn't seem to line up with that classic textbook picture of autism. Well, your instincts are spot on. This very difference is the reason so many girls are diagnosed late or sometimes not at all.
You know, the key to unlocking all of this is a concept called the female autism phenotype. It's basically a term for how autism so often presents in girls, and the absolute cornerstone of it is something called masking. Think of it as a constant, exhausting performance to hide autistic traits just to fit in. And here's the kicker. Our standard diagnostic tools were mostly built by studying boys, so they're just not designed to see through that mask.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at 4 key signs that are super easy to miss. Then we'll get into how to speak the right language, the language evaluators understand. We'll build a hands-on observation toolkit, and finally, we'll pull it all together so you can go from detective to a powerful advocate.
All right, let's dive into the heart of it. We're about to unpack 4 specific signs of autism in girls that fly under the radar all the time.
Now this slide really gets to a core difference. The stereotype, right? It's the kid who withdraws, who doesn't seem interested in other kids. But for so many autistic girls, it's the complete opposite. There's this desperate, powerful drive to fit in, and that turns them into incredible social mimics. And this mimicry, this masking, it's like a full-time job. Seriously, it's not just casual observation. It is intense studying, learning social scripts, copying how other kids move their hands, matching their tone of voice. This is exactly why a child might seem like a perfect angel at school. She is using every single bit of her energy to keep that performance going, holding it all in until she finally gets to a safe place, like home.
So how you talk about this to an evaluator is absolutely crucial. This phrase right here, it's gold, because it connects the perfect school behavior to the consequence. It's not just that she's well-behaved, it's that the effort it takes leaves her utterly drained and prone to meltdowns later. That is the functional impairment they really need to hear about.
Okay, the second sign is all about special interests. We've all heard the classic examples, right? Trains, complex math, things like that. But for girls, these passionate interests are often in things that are way more socially acceptable, like horses or Disney or a specific pop star. And because the topic itself seems normal, the incredible, all-consuming intensity behind it gets completely missed.
And this is the main point right here. A neurotypical kid might love a movie. An autistic kid might learn every single line of dialogue, need to own every piece of merchandise, and be physically unable to talk about anything else for weeks. So remember, the indicator isn't the topic, it's the sheer intensity of that interest.
The third sign is about how distress actually shows up. Boys are often more likely to externalize their struggles, in ways you can easily see. But girls, they often internalize, they act in. And this can look like severe anxiety or an extreme paralyzing perfectionism, which so dangerously just gets written off as shyness or a personality quirk.
And internalizing isn't just being a bit of a warrior. It can show up as crippling perfectionism, really high anxiety, and even something called selective mutism, where a child is perfectly capable of speaking, but in certain situations is physically unable to get the words out. When you talk to a professional, it's so important to connect these behaviors to their triggers, like a sudden change in plans or sensory overload.
And finally, let's just bust the myth about eye contact. An evaluator's form might just have a simple checkbox. Makes eye contact. Yes or no? Well, a lot of autistic girls are going to get a yes because they've been socialized their whole lives that it's the polite thing to do. But it's the quality of the eye contact that tells the real story. Does it look forced? Is it maybe a little too intense? Does it feel like a skill she learned rather than a natural way to connect? So once again, it all comes down to the language you use. Instead of just letting them tick that box, you can reframe the whole observation with a sentence just like this one. This phrase explains the nuance. It tells the evaluator, hey, I see past the surface level performance, and I'm describing a real difference in how she communicates.
Okay, so we've just covered 4 huge signs, from masking all the way to eye contact. But just spotting them, that's only half the battle. Now we have to learn how to talk about them effectively. This next section is all about becoming a translator, taking what you see every day and turning it into the kind of language that evaluators can actually hear and act on.
Think of these phrases as your secret weapons. They are so powerful because they don't just describe a behavior, they describe a functional limitation. Masks at school but falls apart at home shows the immense cost of her social effort. Scripted or controlling play points to a lack of flexible social skills. Sensory aversions that limit her daily life, well, that one speaks for itself.
All right, now for the really practical stuff. We are going to build your observation toolkit. The whole point here is to write down specific, concrete examples that translate all those traits we've been talking about into the official language of an assessment.
First up, social and communication. Look for scripting. Is she using lines from her favorite TV show in everyday conversation? It's not just cute. It can show she's borrowing language instead of creating it herself. Or notice if she acts like a little professor, trying to direct the play instead of just playing. And of course, document that pattern of social exhaustion. For each one of these, try to have a specific example from the last week ready to go.
Next is self-direction, and this is all about safety and judgment. This category is so important because it proves that she needs more supervision than another kid her age. So document things like extreme naivete, like would she go off with a stranger just because they were nice to her? Or does she totally panic if a rule gets broken or plans suddenly change? These aren't just her being careless, they show a pattern that needs to be understood.
Self-care is another huge area, and it's one where even girls who are doing great in school can have massive daily struggles. We're talking about the daily battles over scratchy socks or the seams on her jeans. The fact that you have to prompt her step by step through a simple shower, or extreme food selectivity. This isn't just picky eating. These are clear-cut examples of challenges that impact daily life, and that's exactly the evidence an evaluator is looking for. And finally, emotional regulation. This is about seeing what's happening on the inside. Look for those physical signs of anxiety, skin picking, chewing on her collar, biting her nails. And please, be on the lookout for the delayed meltdown. This is when a tiny thing at 6 p.m., like spilling a drink, causes a massive explosion. The real reason is something that happened hours earlier at school. When the reaction feels totally out of proportion to the trigger, that's a huge clue. It's a sign she's been holding it all in all day long.
So, you've gathered your observations, you've learned the right language, now it's time to put it all together. This is that moment where you stop being just a worried detective and you become an informed, powerful advocate for your child.
This right here, this is your ultimate takeaway. It's a concise, powerful summary you can use on any referral or application form. See how it leads with suspected autism female phenotype? And it immediately connects the masking at school to the meltdowns at home while hitting on those key areas like self-care and safety. It paints a clear, compelling picture that is very, very hard to ignore.
And that's the transformation. By understanding these subtle differences and learning the language to describe them, you've moved from a place of worry to a place of action. You now have a plan. You're an empowered advocate.
And that really leaves us with one last thought to chew on. We've seen how a textbook definition built around one group of people can completely fail another. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where else might our standard definitions be falling short? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.